Yo, what's good? It's your boy Vega, TheCryptOnline.com, doing kind of a retrospective on the Wu-Tang Clan. I want to preface this by saying Wu-Tang Clan is one of the greatest groups, greatest hip-hop groups to do it. I mean, the Wu-Tang 36 Chambers and the Wu-Tang Forever are without a doubt classics. I love both the albums. And then when you want to talk about solo albums, I mean, they just did shit that no one else ever did. No other, hip-hop group, branched out and made really great albums. That doesn't say that it didn't happen. Sure, there were some, great solo albums by group artists. I can think of Evidence had a couple great albums, Prodigy from Mobb Deep had some good albums, things like that. But the Wu-Tang Clan, I mean, once again, they just had bona fide classics from the GZA, Method Man, Ghostface, Raekwon, and then you got RZA, and then you have some, good albums by, Master Killer, Old Dirty Bastard, obviously, Inspectah Deck, and even if, you're a U-God fan, I'm sure you like those ones too, There's some tracks you can pick and choose off, the 3 or 4 solo albums he's dropped. But, since Supreme Clientele by Ghostface, you didn't really have anything that was as strong since then, Then you fast forward, from then, you had this announcement in 2004 about, Raekwon dropping Cuban Links 2, and, we waited forever for it. I mean, that was one of those albums that was kind of like Detox or The Ghost and Doom, The Swift and Changeable. It's one of those albums that, you were told was coming out, you have high expectations, but nothing ever really came to fruition. But, years go by, 5 or 6 years, and finally Raekwon drops the Only Built for Cuban Links 2 album, which I have here playing in the background. And I gotta say, this album is pretty damn good, front to back. I mean, granted, there's some things I don't like about it, but I find it to be very strong. Like, you hear this track right here, which I love this track, but the instrumental, I don't know who it was by, but Pete Rock flipped the same sample on his album, New York's Finest, that had Royal Flush on the track, which was freaking amazing. I'm not saying that track is better than this one, but it's just kind of like, oh, all right, I didn't already hear this, but it's a familiar sound already, you know what I mean? It's not fresh. But what I liked about this album a lot is the rawness of it. Everything about it just sounds really raw, which is really good. And Raekwon really brought his A game, unlike that he did on the previous albums he dropped. To me, Raekwon has got a lot of hits and misses. He's one of my favorite Wu-Tang members, easily one of the most skilled lyricists in the group, next to GZA, Ghost, and Inspectah Deck. In my opinion, this album is a great album, and probably the best album that had dropped in 2009. Which is to say a lot, because 2009 actually had a lot of good albums. I can't think of anything off the head because I don't have a list or anything out in front of me, but if you go back into that year, there was definitely some good shit that dropped. But Raekwon was kind of ahead above all of them. And if I had to rate this album out of 5, I would give it a solid 4, and I think it's great. The other Wu-Tang album that I think and like I said, this is probably the best album since Supreme Clientele had dropped. Now fast forward a couple more years to 2012 or 13. We had this album that was announced kind of out of left field, was Czarface. And that was a collaboration album between MC Esoteric from Boston, a guy I've seen and have met many times, and I've seen him around for years. We're going back like 15 years, and I wasn't the biggest Esoteric fan. He was never my favorite MC. He was never, my favorite MC from Boston. I thought he was, good, but I don't think he had hit his stride yet. And I say that, like, even with him, he had this beef with Cage, and I totally rode with Cage on it because I was a huge Cage fan. I mean, I still am for the most part, especially with his older shit. I thought was real dope. But I felt like back then, Esoteric really, was still trying to find himself. And which he's done recently. I think the last couple albums he's put out have been great. But really, when he linked up with Esoteric, which he did, I think, on Dangerous Connection, or it might have been Sole Purpose. I think it was Dangerous Connection. You saw a nice sound of them together, and I thought it was a really good collaboration. He got some shit for it at the time. Cage, I remember dropping the track. He's like, you spent 10 G's to get Inspectah Deck, but who cares? Who gives a shit? Look at it now. Look what happened, 10 years after that beef, or 15 years after that beef. You have this album, Czarface, which is Inspectah Deck, like I said, and Esoteric, and also 7L on the beats. So if you're a fan of 7L and Esoteric, I think you'll really love this. But saying that, if you're a 7L Esoteric fan, I think this album is a lot different than the shit they had put out together. One thing I said about the Raekwon album was the shit was really fucking hard. I mean, really fucking raw. Where I think this album is really fucking hard. The beats are just fucking in your face, and they get smashed throughout the whole fucking album. I'll turn this up a little bit. I mean, listen to Eso on this. I mean, kills it. It's like go less. We all about the dream. From shouting to the beam, they'll be bowing to the team. And now we on the scene. They wonder how it's a regime. We check the how it's a gunpowder like Marines. I'll smack your face, bruise your ribs, crack our legs, brutal kid. Stay ahead of stakes like Medusa did. Lose your weight, act like you sitting down in dinner. I'll remove your lid. Prove a bait, air them out. We don't care who it is. I mean, Esoteric just brings it, man. This guy, say what you want about him, but for this album, he fucking delivered, man. Every verse, everything, the guy put his heart into it. I think he knew he was with a Wu-Tang member, and honestly, probably the most underrated Wu-Tang member that there is. And I say that because I think Inspectah Deck is probably the greatest Wu-Tang member. And yeah, sure, he didn't have the solo success like a Method Man or a Ghostface or Raekwon or even a Jizza, but this guy has never dropped a whack verse. I mean, just to put it simply, the dude has never, ever dropped a whack verse. And, you might want to argue that, but I go back and listen to 36 Chambers. Go back and listen to Wu-Tang Forever. Every fucking time, Deck just kills it, crushes it, knocks it out of the fucking park. And that goes for the rest of the Wu-Tang albums as well. I mean, you can look at the W, you can look at Iron Flag, you can look at that 8 Diagrams. Hell, you can even look at that fucking Better Tomorrow garbage. And Deck doesn't fuck around, man. He comes to fucking rap. and he does it so fucking good. And I don't know why people sleep on him. Like, I don't know. I mean, he had that beef with Joe Budden a couple years ago, and Joe Budden was like, oh, you know, this guy, you know, 25 years in the game or whatever, and he only drops fucking one good verse. And I think he was talking about Cream, but it's clear that he didn't go back and listen to anything by Deck, because Deck just brought it every fucking time. And on this album, it's no different. Deck, you know, treats this like he would any other project he's done or has been on. And like, even if you look at that Raekwon album, you know who opens up the fucking album, first verse on the album? Inspectah Deck. He sets the fucking bar and he keeps it high for everybody. And it doesn't matter what track he's on. I can compare him to a Rugged Man or a Big Daddy Kane or something like that, where if he's getting on the track with you, he's gonna fucking demolish it every single time, and you better fucking bring it up. You know, bring your fucking your lyrics. Otherwise, you're just gonna look like a clown next to him. I mean, look at him on a classic album, Gangstar, Moment of Truth. He's with Guru, who's arguably one of the greatest voices in hip hop ever, and one of the best MCs of all time. I mean, and that's you can't argue that. He's one of the greatest, and especially with Moment of Truth, it's fucking ridiculous, that album. And then you listen to Deck's verse on that, and it holds a candle to any verse. I mean, the scientists metal to the scar. You know, I mean, wild like rock stars who smash guitar. I mean, it's fucking great. And the other thing about the Czarface is the features here. I mean, right here you listen to Rock Marciano, probably one of the hottest rappers out right, underground rappers out right now. And he once again brings it. You got Action Bronson on here. You know, it's a great concept album. This super villain, you know, comic book hero type of, you know, G.I. Joe character is just fucking shit up. You know, it's gangster, it's gully, it's hard, it's fucking in your face. And in my opinion, one of the best Wu-Tang albums, if not the best Wu-Tang album to drop since Supreme Clientele. So now we have these two albums kind of put together. And maybe I didn't mention this, but the production on this Czarface by 7L is it just sets the mood perfectly. And maybe once again, it's coming from that one producer. You don't have 15 different producers on the fucking thing. I forget. Maybe Premier did a beat on this. I forget. I don't think. Maybe he didn't. I forget. But once again, the production front to back is just incredible. Now, coming back to what I was saying just a few moments ago is, you know, since these are the two best albums to drop since then, since that Supreme Clientele era, you know, which one of these albums is better? You know? And I listened to the Raekwon yesterday, all the way through. I listened to Czarface as well. And it's really a hard decision for me. I really think that both albums are fucking great, and I think they're both classics in their own right. And I know that word is thrown around quite a bit, but like this Czarface and with that Raekwon, they have lots of lasting power. That Raekwon came out 6 years ago, almost 5 years ago, 5.5. And it's still just as good as the day I heard it, you know, when I got it on vinyl or whatever. I loved it. And you know, same thing with that Czarface. Nothing, you know, a couple years have passed. They're putting out a Czarface too, and it's just fucking, it stands that test of time. I mean, listen to this beat right here. It's just grimy and in deck. Come on. I mean, just forget about it. So, you know, after listening to those two, I gotta say I love that Raekwon album. I mean, everything about it just goes, you know, perfectly together. And well paced. It's not misplaced. Like sometimes you get these albums, I think they're really good. Some of the tracks are in and out of not order, but you know, you think they would be placed. Could be placed a little bit better, or you cut out a couple fucking skits or whatever. But you know, and the same goes for Czarface. But if I had to choose an album out of these two to, you know, keep with me, you know, over the test of time, I gotta say I'm gonna choose. Man, I guess I'm gonna choose Czarface. For once again, because the beats are fucking hard, and I think both MCs bring it. Unlike that Raekwon album, I thought that we expected greatness from that Raekwon Only Built for Cuban Links too. When I was one of the first people on the internet, TheCryptOnline.com, to announce that, you know, Czarface was coming out, that there would be an Inspectah Deck album with Esoteric and 7L. And when I posted that news, you know, some people were like, oh, you know, that shit's gonna be whack, or it won't come out, or whatnot. Both those things weren't true. I mean, it came out and it fucking wasn't whack. And like I said, say what you want about Esoteric, but he brought it, man, and it was a nice surprise, because I think a lot of people didn't expect much from him, and he stood toe to toe with Deck the whole fucking time, and for that reason, you know, for that surprise and the way that this album came out, I'm going with Czarface as the better album. You know, you can feel free to give your opinions on what you think is a better album. Feel free to subscribe. This is Vega Yojimbo, Vega the Chosen, Vega Damas, Vega, all that good shit. CryptOnline.com, TheCrypt.us, HipHopHeads Podcast, Monday nights at 9 p.m. Catch us on iTunes and all the other shit. I want to say peace, and thanks for watching the video. 1.